This planet's called the jewel of the solar system. Made up mostly of gases, it could float on water, should you find a reservoir 75,000 miles across and just as deep. But what makes the planet so recognizable is its beautiful rings, gray, tan, and beige. They consist of dust, rocks, and ice. Some bits are as tiny as grains of sand, others as large as skyscrapers. The planet I'm talking about is Saturn, and right now, Earth is hurtling toward it at breakneck speed. It all started on a regular day over half a year ago. All of a sudden, Earth changed the course it had been following for several billion years. But instead of rushing towards the Sun, it started to move away from the star. On second thoughts, it might be for the better. We've got more time to find a solution. Earth used to move around the Sun at a speed of 67,000 miles per hour. For some mysterious reason, when it left its orbit, the speed remained the same. It means we're going to cover 746 million miles, separating our planet from Saturn within a year and 3 months. At first, no one realized what had happened, but a couple of hours later it became obvious. Despite the panic that engulfed Earth's inhabitants, nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary. But all too soon, it started to get colder and colder. Astronomers' forecasts were pessimistic. People started to leave their homes at the poles, move closer to the equator. Most plant and animal species were having a hard time. Some of them went extinct, even though we were trying to save them in greenhouses and special conservation parks. The sky changed dramatically. In a week, we could see Mars clearly. It looked like a big reddish sphere hanging low over our heads. Jupiter became as bright as the moon. Once Earth was as far away from the Sun as Mars, days became twice dimmer than they used to be. At first, our planet's atmosphere was acting as a barrier between people and space. That's why we didn't feel the cold immediately. But 7 days later, everyone who dared to leave their home had to be cocooned in heavy winter clothing. By that time, the temperatures had already dropped down to minus 145 degrees Fahrenheit. It got even colder once our planet passed Mars and hurried through the asteroid belt. It's been one of the most dangerous regions on our way so far. Yes, people could admire awesome meteorite showers streaking the sky. But several space bodies managed to get through the Earth's atmosphere. They slammed into the ground, flattening mountains and leaving behind gigantic craters. They caused tsunamis and triggered earthquakes. Right now, most of the planet, including the oceans, has already turned into an icy desert. There's a lack of food and natural resources. We've built underground towns and tunnels connecting them. Our scientists work day and night to find a way out of this situation. If they don't, that's what's going to happen. The closer our planet will be to Saturn, the more the ring planet will loom over the horizon and the larger it'll look. Soon, it'll already shine brighter than the full moon. The massive yellowish-brown orb will be visible even during the day, but it'll look especially impressive at night. Instead of sleeping, millions of people will spend hours watching Saturn grow larger and larger. One day, the distance between the two planets will become the same as the distance between Earth and Mars used to be. Saturn's disk will be about a quarter the size of the full moon. Its rings will be as large as 2/3 of our natural satellite. Soon after that, our planet's speed will start to increase under the influence of Saturn's gravitational pull. The ringed planet is 9 times wider than Earth, and its mass is almost 100 times greater. That's why, instead of moving at a speed of 29 miles per second, we'll be dashing through space at almost 40 miles per second. That's 2,400 times the average car speed. Saturn's gravity will influence the moon more than that of Earth. In no time, we'll lose our satellite. It'll get catapulted into outer space, likely to go into an elliptical orbit around the Sun. If Earth wasn't about to crash into Saturn in the nearest future, the moon could one day cross paths with our planet again. No good would come out of such an encounter. But what's happening on Saturn's side of things? Saturn is one of the largest planets in the solar system, second only to Jupiter. Even though the rings surrounding the planet are huge, they're rather thin, less than a mile thick. Still, the main rings are large enough to stretch from Earth to the moon. But how did the planet get these breathtaking accessories? Beyond the outer edge of the main rings, A, B, and C, there's something astronomers call the F ring. Several million years old, it's the weirdest one. This constantly shifting ring is made up of icy material and is incredibly complex. Its curves, twists, and clumps of brighter substance make it look as if it's braided. Saturn has more than 50 confirmed moons. 2 of them, Pandora and Prometheus, flank the F ring on either side. They weave outside and inside the ring, acting like shepherds. They herd ice particles into a 60-mile thick band. But why are they performing this elaborate dance? No one knows. What scientists do know is that when Saturn's rings were evolving, icy material clumped together and formed moonlets. Some of them grew and turned into the planet's largest moons. But 2 of them collided. That's how the mysterious ring F appeared. If the moonlets had only been made up of small icy particles, the space collision would have left a ring and nothing else. But they had dense rocky cores. Those remained intact and turned into Pandora and Prometheus. People don't have any evidence Saturn's ever collided with another space body. Our Earth might be the first. But before crashing into the planet itself, we'll have to get through its rings, including the ring F. And no, our planet won't just punch a hole in them. Saturn's rings are made of small particles. Earth's gravity will start to pull some of them out of their orbit once we're close enough. It'll result in a long plume that will reach our planet. And later, when we squeeze through, the cloud of icy particles will drag after Earth. It won't have enough power to rid Saturn of its rings completely, though. They'll continue to move around their home planet, but their orbits will change and become more elongated. There will be no more stunning bands. Over time, the rings could probably settle down again, but Earth won't give them such a chance. The collision with our planet won't leave Saturn unscathed. If there's still a possibility to sneak a peek at the sky, people will be able to see the rings disappear into nothingness, but not for long. Soon, the largest chunks of rock will start hitting the surface of our planet, leaving behind lifeless land dotted with craters. In the worst-case scenario, Earth might even collide with one of Saturn's numerous moons. But let's imagine we've passed through this region in one piece, and now our planet's very close to Saturn. The gas giant might seem airy, but there's no way Earth can fly through the huge sphere and leave from the other side. Gravity is what keeps all that gas together. The very gravity that make our planet speed up. The closer it is to the much bigger space body, the stronger the pull is. It'll cause the fault lines on Earth to rupture. It'll also set off powerful volcanic eruptions all over the world. And then, with enormous force, our planet will crash into Saturn. The planet's atmospheres will get compressed. This will cause a dramatic and fast temperature rise, and in no time, the air will be on fire. Scientists claim that Saturn's core is dense, made up of iron and nickel, and surrounded by a rocky layer. But we'll never make it there. Earth will burn in the bigger planet's atmosphere after being literally torn apart. Our beautiful, blue-green world will turn into billions of trillions of tons of vaporized rock. Pity. Maybe Earth will become yet another Saturn's ring, instead of the ones it's ruined. Sounds grim, I know. Yeah, we can't save Earth from Saturn, but that's only a bad dream. So, maybe we take that effort and save us from a real threat, climate change. Just saying. Now, let's pretend that humanity faces a huge threat from outer space. So, we'll imagine that a giant planet-eating octopus comes to our solar system to eat Venus, Mars, Earth, Jupiter, and other planets, except Saturn. Therefore, people decide to move to the big planet with giant rings. Fortunately, they already have cool technologies that allow them to make such trips. So, we get into giant ships, take off, and fly to Saturn. Life on the planet itself is impossible because it has no solid ground. The ship won't be able to land there. This is a giant gas ball that is 9 times wider than Earth. To compare their sizes, look at a 5-cent coin and a baseball. And the planet's atmosphere consists mainly of hydrogen and helium. So if the ship starts to land, it'll never reach solid ground. And the lower it goes, the higher the pressure it will experience. Eventually, the ship will just be crushed. Therefore, we have only one choice: the rings of Saturn. They're made up of giant, medium-sized, and tiny particles of ice and rock flying around the gas giant at tremendous speed. They were formed from comets flying by. Saturn's gravity knocked these celestial bodies off their course and crushed them with its pressure. Fragments of these comets began to accumulate around Saturn, forming rings. Now, some of these particles fly faster, some are slower. The closest to the planet is the D ring. It's followed by rings C and B. Then there's a large gap called Cassini division. Rings A, F, G, and E come after. This classification is very convenient for creating a ring map. So, people approach the rings, but don't dare to land on them. First, they send test capsules with robots to scout the area. The robots choose a suitable location on the E ring. In fact, the distance between the rocks is quite large, and the ship can easily fly there. There are tiny particles, huge rocks the size of houses, and comets the size of a whole mountain. The first robot flies up to a large rock at high speed. At this moment, a baseball-sized stone pierces the robot's body. Another robot gets smashed between two colliding boulders. The third robot gets caught in a rain of sharp icicles and breaks. People have big engineering workshops on their ships, so they build new capsules and new robots. This time they're made of more durable materials, so the robots reach a big rock again. A few particles crash into them, but don't break through the armor. The machine set up a small station on a flying rock where people can live. But after a couple of hours, a big chunk of asteroid smashes the station. Well, seems like we need another strategy. Giant ships scan the entire area of the E-ring and calculate the trajectories of billions of stones. After lengthy calculations, people finally find the perfect places in the middle of this chaos that will stay intact for a long time. They land on these large rocks in their capsules and begin to settle down. They build stations and small houses and install powerful batteries on them. Saturn is located at a distance of 9.5 astronomical units from the Sun. 1 unit is the distance from the Sun to Earth. So, Saturn is a pretty cold place. That's why there's so much ice flying around it. But how to get the energy to heat it all up? There's too little of it on large ships. Besides, solar panels are ineffective here because of the great distance from the Sun. Therefore, scientists create a way to generate kinetic energy from flying stones. It's like a windmill. When the wind drives the fans, these movements are converted into energy. So engineers build panels that collect power from the moving stones. But it doesn't slow the speed of rocks down because Saturn's gravity continues to move them. Thus, people receive a source of almost limitless energy. Some space stations have plants and trees that produce oxygen through photosynthesis. Only instead of sunlight, they get energy from ultraviolet. Then, people fill large tanks with oxygen and carry them to their homes. People begin to occupy the adjacent rings. You don't need a lot of fuel to get from one place to another. You can land on a rock, calculate its route, and wait for it to bring you to the needed point. Then you can move to another one, and so on until you reach your destination. More and more people leave their ships and move to the rings. It seems that life is getting better, but then psychological problems begin. Constant movement in the vacuum of space drives everyone mad. Imagine living on a carousel that never stops. You can't walk to the store whenever you want because it always flies away. No one can go out for a walk, even in a spacesuit, because there's a chance to come across a rock flying at high speed. You can't plan anything because, at the moment, your plans can be ruined by a giant piece of ice. Computers don't help either. They can't calculate the trajectories of all space bodies. Rocks tend to break and split into hundreds of smaller ones. Also, new comets fly by and also become part of the rings. All this creates uncertainty and causes a sense of anxiety in people. Besides, it's dark, cold, and very lonely on the rings. Now think about building a base on a space object, but your best friend lands on another one a few miles away. Then, a giant icicle crashes into his rock and increases its speed. And a few days later, your friend is too far away. And it happens all the time. The only way to change your life is to settle on one of Saturn's moons. The planet has 83 of them. People have already confirmed and named 63, and the existence of 20 others has yet to be confirmed. They're all like different worlds. Some of them may be habitable, and the best candidate among them is Titan. There may be water on it, and its atmospheric pressure is only 1.5 times greater than Earth's. Its atmosphere consists of nitrogen and a little methane, forming carbon smog in Titan's upper layers. For this reason, we can't study this moon from Earth. But the coolest thing is that Titan flies outside the rings of Saturn. This means people can lead a quiet life there. There's also satellite Phoebe, covered with craters like our moon. This giant celestial body looks more like a gigantic meteorite. People have a lot of choices of where to start a new life. During a couple of hundred years spent on ships near Saturn, humanity would learn everything about its satellites. But why did they try to live on the rings? Why didn't they land on one of the moons from the very beginning? Because, well, then this video would be less fun and a whole lot shorter. But what if we were initially born inside the rings of Saturn? Let's say a massive meteorite with frozen water got caught by the planet's gravity. There were the simplest life forms inside the ice, and then this life began to acquire more developed forms. Imagine that the large rock managed to remain untouched for hundreds of millions of years, and during this time, humans appeared. But of course, they would be very different there. Firstly, they wouldn't experience gravitational forces. This would make them taller, but weaker. People's skin would be pale because of the lack of light, but very hardy thanks to cold temperatures. Particles of ice and grains of sand flying in space would roughen people's skin. In such biological armor, without gravity, they would jump from one rock to another in search of food and water. And, by the way, that would be the main problem. How would people survive without oxygen in the vacuum of space? Where would they get their food? Saturn's rings are a pretty lifeless and dangerous place. If there are not even the simplest forms of life there, then how could such a complex one as the human appear? Therefore, even in theory, the appearance of people would be impossible there. You're relaxing in your room and streaming some good tunes when suddenly the network's down. You try rebooting your phone, but there's still no connection. Out of nowhere, your sister barges into your room in panic. She's screaming something about rings. Boxing rings? Wedding rings? Rings on the tub? She's not making any sense. So she drags you out of the house and shows you the sky. You take a look up and see streaks of objects forming miles above the Earth's surface. Her connection seems to work. The two of you check online what's going on, and everywhere the same thing is making headlines. Rings are suddenly appearing in our sky. #EarthRings is breaking the record, and videos are going super viral. Your sister can't help but join the crowd and takes a bunch of selfies with the sky. You run to the TV in your living room to check out the news. Scientists are warning about a coming catastrophe and explaining that everyone should remain indoors. Even though it's a cloudless day in the middle of summer, the weather seems to be getting colder and colder. Suddenly, the signal's cut off. Other channels show nothing either. Then you see your neighbors packing their bags and heading out. Others follow suit. You hesitate a bit, but decide to do the same in the end. Your sister is still outside taking selfies when you urge her to come along with you to seek some answers. The two of you hop in your car and drive out into the city. The rings above seem to be gaining more mass with each second. You and your sister are getting colder and colder. You head to the university to see if anyone knows anything, but there's no one there. Only one parked car in the lot. And it's a good thing you recognize that car. You and your sister rush in and find the astronomy professor doing some quick calculations and trying to figure out why all this is happening. He urges you to take seats and begins explaining. No one knows what this is all about, but it's limiting the sun's exposure on Earth, which explains why it's getting colder by the minute. Why the rings are getting thicker is a mystery too. On Saturn, the rings are made up of ice and rock particles. They can be as small as an ant or the size of a bus. The rocks could be leftover meteor debris or even remnants of dwarf planets. But since Earth is so close to the Sun, ice wouldn't be something you'd find floating above us. With all these rocks piled up, They block the Earth's access to sun to warm us up and give us light. The professor goes on to explain that Earth will enter a new ice age, and oxygen levels will deplete within a year's time unless those newborn rings disappear anytime soon. This also explains why there's no connection. The rocks that form the rings are hitting and breaking the satellites. Suddenly, you hear a loud ringing noise outside. The three of you head outside and see a helicopter blasting an alarm with a red light flashing. "Everyone to your homes now! This is not a drill! Everyone, head home!" You get in your car with your sister, but the roads are jammed. You have to go on foot, which will take 2 hours. There's no way anyone can remain outdoors. You venture out seeing everyone stuck on the road. They're all arguing with each other and causing chaos. You try not to get caught in the middle of anything and sneak your way to the highway. With the rings getting thicker, less sunlight is breaking through. This Ice Age info is stuck in your head, chilling you even more. You take a deep breath and see a thin mist coming out of your mouth. The sky is getting darker and you're still not home yet. Your sister is tired and needs to rest, but you urge her to move on. You find an abandoned clothes shop and head inside. The store clerks are actually giving away thick jackets for everyone to wear. You grab a couple and slip them on. Only 1 more hour to get home, but the sky is completely dark. There's no way you and your sister can go out in such conditions, so you decide to camp up in the clothes shop. They set up a mini bonfire in the middle of the shop and create makeshift sleeping bags with the rest of the unused clothes. Luckily, there's enough food to feed everyone, including you and your sister. It's the middle of the night. The fire goes out and you can't see outside the shop. You head to the window and open it up. A huge pile of snow spills in and wakes everyone up. It's the middle of August, and a snowstorm formed overnight. Everyone is freezing, and they start the fire anew. There's no radio or any way to find out what's happening. The wind picks up and starts shaking the shop. Things start falling off the shelves, but you and everyone else are cozy by the fire. The next day, you look outside and see the entire area covered in snow. You live in a sunny place where it barely rains, and the rings in the outer atmosphere are even bigger than last night. Out of nowhere, a truck filled with people pulls over, and the driver tells you there's a shelter for everyone some miles away. The truck has chains all over the tires and is equipped for the worst snowy conditions. Even though it's morning, the sky is pretty dark. You and everyone else hop in. Abandoned cars, some with their doors still open, are scattered all over. The truck drives around them or just smashes through the ones in the way. It pulls over next to an ambulance and takes all the equipment to help the ones in need. You drive past your neighborhood and see your entire house covered in snow. The large tree in your backyard has fallen under the weight of the snow and broken the roof, allowing snow to flood in. The truck speeds through and gets to the shelter, which, to your surprise, is the mall. You get out and see many of the townspeople being led to various stores that have now turned into dorms and health units. You're left in a sports store with a bunch of other people. Your sister has also been able to bunk with you, and to your luck, you see the professor helping out some people. But shortly after that, a loud explosion blasts through the mall and shatters glass screens. Everyone ducks for cover. You see people running outside. You head out and see a large metallic object lying in front of the mall entrance. There are people crowding the entire area, so it's not easy to see what all the fuss is about. But after getting a closer look, you find out it's a satellite fallen from orbit. It crashed in the front yard and made the boom. There were also reports of other satellites crashing on Earth in the most random places. That means all communication has been wiped out of the map. You run back inside the mall to await what happens next. You look at your sister in fear, not knowing that the new Ice Age has just begun. One year later, you're relaxing in your bunker when your sister barges in, freaking out. The rings are still there, but it's something else now. You run outside and see everyone gathering around and looking at the sky. Within a year, temperatures have dropped to freeze the entirety of the Earth's surface. Deserts and tropical jungles have turned into icy wastelands. More than half of the wildlife went extinct, and trees are as rare as a four-leaf clover, which means oxygen levels have dropped significantly. Most of the population, or what's remaining of it, live with oxygen tanks, with scientists still trying to crack the case of the rings. Exactly what the professor predicted. But up in the sky, rocks seem to be falling down and crashing all over. It starts off far away, but then the rocks begin to fall down close by. You and everyone else run back into the mall, which has been covered with a layer of metal to keep the warmth inside. It should be pretty safe in there. If the rocks are falling down, that means the rings are dissipating. Suddenly, you're full of hope that the ice age might be over soon.